Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reverse the Verse Live, The Shape of Ships. You just saw a little bit of the white box interior and exterior of the Anvil Carrack. Let's give it up for the Carrack, everybody. Thank you, JJ. Hi, I'm your host, content manager, Jared Huckaby. And if you've never seen Reverse the Verse before, where are you? Where have you been? Welcome, welcome. You finally made it for the last show of 2018. Joining us on the show this week, a very special show this week, is none other than my partner in crime, the yin to my yang, the red to my any other color whatsoever, John Crewe. John, how you doing, man?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. That was quite an intro.
Actually, I forgot. I was going to call you Overlord of the Vehicle Verse. Was that what we?
Something terrible like that.
Overlord of the Vehicle Verse, John Crewe. How you been, John?
I'm good. It's been off camera for a few days. Now we're back on.
I haven't called you for calling all devs in like almost 4 weeks at this point. And I mean, you're done. In fact, because we asked so much of you for our anniversary promotion. If you haven't seen the anniversary promotions, there are 8 roundtable discussions that are available now on YouTube, talking about all kinds of Star Citizen spaceships and stuff. I gotta mute this thing because it's making noise right now. Check those out. Of course, those videos were directed towards newcomers. We had a big free fly during the anniversary promotion, so the video content that went with it focused on the flyable ships for the most part, with a couple morsels here and there we can throw in for you guys. But we know what you want, the meat, the meat and potatoes, as it were. So John has agreed to come on the show today and do a full kind of,
I feel sorry for anyone that's going to transcribe this, because it's going to come thick and fast.
Yeah, I just went, so you're gonna have to transcribe that. We're gonna talk about all the ships outstanding in the pipeline. Now, when I say all the ships, let's qualify that a little bit before we get going. There are currently 136 ships in various states of being in the Star Citizen universe. The one that you know of. There's also the ones you don't know of. But 136 that you know of. And of that, there are 80 that are flyable in game, so there are 36 still outstanding. We're not going to have time to hit every single one in depth, which is fine, because a lot of ships have variants, and those variants are in the same state as their originals. Like when we get to the Hull series, we're not going to talk about the Hull E or the Hull A. We're going to talk about the Hull C. And what's applicable for the Hull C will pretty much apply to everything else, since the Hull C comes first, and then everything else will iterate after that. Additionally, if a ship is farther out in the pipeline, we're going to have less concrete or tangible information about that stuff. Like if it's a ship that's not scheduled to come in 2019, or maybe it's a 2020 or possibly even a 2021 ship, there's going to be less that we can share about it now than we would then, because obviously nobody's working on that ship at the moment. So we often get asked the question, the single most common question is, talk about this or talk about that. When we do and when we don't, it's because we actually have information to share, or we don't have information to share. It's one of the big misconceptions about game development is that we have all the answers just figured out ahead of time, and that's not. That would be game construction. We're in game development. This is the process of figuring out those answers, developing those answers along the way. So we will share what we have to share. We will update on as many ships as we have to update on, and we will try to fill as much of this hour, and maybe a little bit more depending on what we need, as we can with the breadth and scope of information that's available. So, John.
Let's go.
We are just going to go down. That's my big intro. We are going to skip. We have an order of operations here, so I'm going to start this off. I want to start right off the bat with reworks and improvements. Now, we just had a big Carrack video, and we'll play it again later on for if anybody came in later and missed it. But I want to start with something that affects a bunch of ships and try to get a bunch of things out of the way first. Reworks and improvements. We know what a rework is. We've seen reworks before. The Carrack rework, the 300 series is undergoing a rework. But on the public roadmap, available at robertspaceindustriescom/roadmap, we see a lot of things that say improvements, M50 improvements, Reliant core improvements. And during our anniversary promotion, you even mentioned possible Vanguard improvements as opposed to a rework. Why don't you tell us what the difference between a rework and improvement is?
So a rework is pretty much you take what you have and you put it all in the bin and you start from scratch again. You keep the style, and probably the only thing we keep are the animation templates. So how the person gets into the ship and how they sit down in the seat if it's a ship you directly enter the cockpit in. And then we rebuild everything else around that. In terms of improvements, that's usually focused to one specific area. So it might just be completely redoing the interior of the cockpit, but keeping the external shell of the ship the same. Maybe the cockpit screens are too small, they're in the wrong place, doesn't have enough buttons. That would be an improvement. For other ships, it could be another room, or something that we have to do on a lot of ships is go back and physicalize where the components are in there. Because when we built the ship, we went, yep, there are these components, they need to go in the ship here, there's enough space in the walls, but don't worry about making hatches for them at this point because it may all change. And invariably it does. And now we're at the point where those components aren't changing in size, the amount a ship has isn't changing very much. We can go, right, now's the time to go back, take that generic wall panel you made and make a hatch in there for a cooler component. And that would be an improvement rather than a rework.
Okay. I imagine things like adjusting seat height would be an improvement. And whatnot. That's a big topic, and that's me shilling for next week's Calling All Devs. You want to check out Kirk told me on next week's Calling All Devs for a great discussion on seat height.
Thrilling.
Yeah, I know. Well, hey, you know what? With this audience, we can do shows about seat height. You know, no other game in the world would do a show about the elevation of seats and cockpits, but we do, and it's one of my favorite things about this. During the anniversary promotion, you mentioned little tweaks for the Vanguard. Can we elaborate on that?
Yep. So obviously we said a rework was everything goes in the bin. For the Vanguard, we don't want to do that. So what we're doing, little tweaks wise, is we're starting with the interior central pod room, and we're completely redoing that to make better use of the space of the ship. I know there's a lot of complaints that the ship didn't seem to fulfill all the space available inside it.
The Warden has the master bathroom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bathroom larger than some other ships. So we're sorting that room out first for the Warden, because that knocks on to doing the other variants. And then as we go from there, it's we're adjusting the turret. That moves on to adjusting the neck section, because that's where the majority of the components are going to go in that neck section, which explains why it exists, which a lot of people thought, oh, it's just completely dead space. And also the tail section for putting components in. And then after that, obviously making that pod wider has knock-ons to the exterior. And we're not 100% locked down on what changes we're going to do to the exterior, but we're going to fix the interior first and then sit down and review what changes we can do to the exterior in the time. And I even have some pictures.
Well, no, not yet.
No.
Not when we get there.
Okay. Nothing.
We got a whole section for the Vanguard variants. We'll get there. Just want the little tweaks. You're going to give it all away, John.
Okay.
We're in the realm of talking about reworks and improvements here. We talked a while back, I think it was probably a year ago now, there was some discussion about potential changes to ships with a racer and interceptor role like the M50. I think it was around the time the Razor was introduced. We said we were considering like, why do racers have weapons at all, and stuff like that. Has there been any further development on that at all?
No, for me personally, as a developer, if I wasn't in the position I'm in and I had no influence, I would want them to be two separate things. But that is not an official change we're doing at this time.
Gotcha.
I would like to have an interceptor ship and a racing ship.
All right. Yeah, I remember when Capture the Core was out there, the M50 being able to fly around and take the core all over the place was as intended, but the fact that it could also draw a bead on people and kill people, it was a bit OP.
Yeah, it's whilst it's one of those great things on paper, the way our ships are distributed, you have the people that go, yeah, that'd be great for me, because I get something out of it, and then you've got the other half who have that ship and go, oh no, you've taken it all away from me. And it's if we wanted to do something like that, we need to do it in a way that both sides are happy with.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, in case it gets lost in the conversation there, that was John speaking of something that he would like to do, but no plans have been done. It's
No.
No decisions are made in a vacuum here. There are lots of developers that have lots of opinions about the things that they like, and we have to reach an internal consensus before we do much of anything. So that is not. So John saying that he'd like to build some separation is not the same as us saying that we are going to do separation.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that distinction is in there, that has not been decided. Yeah.
I have lots of bosses that need to sign off on things like that.
All right. Freelancer, any plans or changes to the freelancer visibility?
None planned. That Beatty question is, am I going to get people to move the dashboard closer? There are no plans to do that. The dashboard is the size it is for a few reasons, so there will be components going behind that. You can't, because of the way you get into the freelancer, so the pilot gets it, you both get in from the middle and you split out like that. If you were to put the seats any further forwards, they then need to come closer together, at which point you start running into issues where if both players at the front get out at the same time, they can't, they start hitting into each other. So to move them forward and to shorten the dashboard means changing the exterior profile of the ship.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah. So unless you make the front of the ship, wide like my face as opposed to narrow like your face.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a ship that looks like me. All right. So no plans this time. And while we're on the topics of improvement and reworks, has there been any consideration of a Retaliator rework?
There's nothing planned at this time. I know there's quite a few concerns with the layout of it. Again, going back to no one would build a ship this way. It doesn't make sense. It's just a figure of 8, but with holes cut out of it. There are no current plans to do anything with it. It's without really changing the ship massively. There's not a lot you can do with that because it is a long, thin ship with 2 huge voids that are swappable, and a bit in the middle where you get in. There's, without changing it from what it is, there's not a great amount. There's no plans to add another bed for the 7th person. Captain goes down with the ship.
All right. So yeah, so basically I wanted to get those rework and improvement questions out of the way right off the bat. We've been collecting questions in 2 different threads on Spectrum, both the Calling All Devs thread and the thread specific for RTB. I just wanted to front load a bunch of the, hey, what about a rework on this? What about a rework on this? Now, I do want to stress that no plans to do that now. It's not the same as we will never rework. Yep. It just means that, it means that right now there's no plans to do it. It doesn't mean that tomorrow's Saturday, but next week there won't be a meeting where we decided to prioritize that or whatever. But I wanted everybody to be on the same playing field, know how things are today. It's the best we can ever offer in the middle of a game's development. That's how things sit today. No plans for a Retaliator rework, no plans to adjust the freelancer visibility at this time.
And quickly to touch on the improvement side of it, some people have noticed that Retaliator actually had that pass done on it a patch or 2 ago, in that all the hatches for the components were cut out.
Right.
They're not the real components put in there, but they are ones of the same size and shape and type to simulate that. So that is a great in-game example. If you look at the Retaliator in 2.0 versus 3.3 or 3.3.7, whatever it's on at the moment, you'll see the differences there in those corridors and the component hatches.
Yeah. Moving on from reworks and improvements, I want to go to another kind of tangentially related, the Redeemer. Is it true that everybody at CIG just hates the Redeemer?
Not everyone hates the Redeemer. I'm sure there's someone who likes it.
Talk to me about the Redeemer.
It's a weird ship. Obviously, it came out of the Next Great Starship series, and we hired some of the developers on it. And at one point, it was used in Squadron quite a lot. So it was all there, ready to go. And just as the pipeline progressed, we sort of found more and more problems with it as a ship that we didn't catch in the original pass on it, partly because those metrics or systems didn't exist. So it's no fault of the people that did it, that they didn't account for future designs. And it's sort of, you get to a point with some ships where you're just nibbling away at doing them, going, I need to do a bit here, I need to do a bit there, where it becomes uneconomical to spend the time just patching them up. And you go, right, this needs to be completely redone from scratch. It doesn't fit metrics. It doesn't fit all the gameplay it's supposed to go in it. It's not an optimal for performance layout, and it's a weird gunship dropship hybrid. It was in Squadron because of the dropship aspect, not of the gunship aspect, but it only could carry 6 people, I think, which isn't a great dropship. So when we came to the realization right, we need to do this from scratch, it was a case of, if we're doing it from scratch, it needs to be better than this, but are there other things we could do? And that's where the Vanguard hoplite came from, because we had that chassis built and it was relatively quick to get the interior of that stripped out, put a new one in. It was the same dimensions, it just slotted in, and then over time we sort of went, actually it would be great if it could have more than the Vanguard hoplite carries, and that's where the Valkyrie came from.
Gotcha. So the Valkyrie has taken its place inside
the Valkyrie's
Squadron 42.
Yeah, the Valkyrie's taken its place as the dropship inside Squadron 42, and go back to when we redo the Redeemer, it will be coming back as a proper gunship.
Right. The last time we talked about the Redeemer, you mentioned comparing it to an AC-130.
Yeah, that's just a modern military reference for those that care about planes. It's not going to look like an AC-130 or always have all its guns sticking out one side. It's just that it's there. It's circling around, providing relatively close support to things on the ground or on space stations, asteroids, whatever.
Okay. All right. Anything else you can tell the Redeemer fans out there? There are quite a few of them out there. It's a lot of people's favorite ships. It was my dad's favorite ship when he got into Star Citizen. Anything you want to leave Redeemer fans with before we move on?
I'd be personally curious whether you see it as an Aegis ship or whether you see it as a different manufacturer ship. That's another one of the sticking points we have internally on the art side, is it's Aegis, but it doesn't look like any other Aegis ship. So when we come to do it, it may not stay as Aegis, may move to another manufacturer, or it may radically change in styling to fit more like Aegis, so more traditional Aegis engines and intakes.
Gotcha. I think in order to keep it somewhat close to the original profile, I think many people would prefer it just switch manufacturers and not have to be Aegis, if that keeps much of what folks fell in love with there. I mean, obviously some things are going to have to change regardless. But if we can keep it, if changing the manufacturer keeps us closer to its original thing, I think that's probably where most people would land. But we'll see what they say.
The nutcrackers are divisive.
maybe the Drake Redeemer or the Grey Cat Redeemer, whatever. JJ? Okay, we are going to, I just want to see if he was there. I saw something move over there. Before we get to the Vanguard variants, which are coming up next, I want to go to the Reliant variants. The Reliant variants, which are on the roadmap right now, robertspaceindustriescom/roadmap. Can we finally, with the Reliant variants in the works, can we, well, let's just talk about the Reliant variants first, and then I'll get to my questions. Tell us about the Reliant variants.
So you've got the 3 variants. You've got I can never remember the names of which one does which, but you've got the science research one, the news van one,
the Tana,
and the combat one.
Oh, see, I got all. Sen, the Tana, and the.
There's the Mako.
Mako. Yeah, and the one that's out there is the core.
Yeah. So they primarily load out and skin changes externally. Internally as well.
The Tana is the skirmisher. The Mako is the yeah. Okay. I get it. It's on there.
The externally, the big differences are livery changes, loadout changes. Internally, it's really that rear section, which is why we're spending the time this quarter to, I think what the community calls embiggening the back of it. again, it's an improvement, not a rework. Purely for time constraints, there is the majority of the improvements are done on that back section to make it suitable for someone to stand up with comfort and to fit all the gear that's going to go in the back of those variants. So I saw a few people complaining the other day on the forums and on Reddit going, oh, why didn't they're only making it have this much more SCU, it's not as good as insert ship here. Why didn't they just completely redo the ship? We're happy with the rest of the ship. It was just that rear area.
There's some technical challenges with Reliant. The questions I have here, can we finally get the ability to manually change the state or rotation of the ship? Right now we have to drop the landing gear and go into landing mode whenever we want to rotate the ship.
In 3.4, no, you won't be able to do that. But in 3.5, in fact, this week, Dave Colson started, who's working on the IFCS improvements. He's started on a very rough version of the first vehicle state machine, which allows you to I can't even think of English words now, to decouple vehicle animation states from flight states. So you'll be able to have your ships with VTOL engines do their VTOL stuff without putting their landing gears out, be able to, like the Sabre and Sabre and Vanguard, put their wings out without being in landed mode, and the same for the Reliant.
That's huge. We've been waiting for an update to the vehicle state stuff for a while now.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change. I don't want to commit to every single ship is going to have all their animations done, because obviously at the moment to get that to work, we've had to bake the animations for every ship's landing gear and vehicle parts, and there's a lot of ships that have had that done. So we'll try and do as many as we can for 3.5, but not all of them might hit day one.
But eventually, when that vehicle state machine is up and running, we'll be able to rotate the Reliant without having to go into landing mode. You'll be able to switch. That's something like the Xi'an Scout.
Yeah.
Without having to do that, it'll affect the Santoki. Shay, I did it. She can't hear me. But yeah, it'll affect a lot of those ships being able to change their states, and then the big one, VTOL, being able to rotate the engines without having to go into landing mode and stuff. That's cool. Nice.
And it also is one of the blockers for a ship we'll talk about later.
Oh yeah. Will anything be done to let us get out of our seats and move around while in flight? Right now, because of that transition, the ship's got to be in its horizontal mode in order to get out of your seats. Is that going to stay?
At the moment, that's staying. The state stuff will help you to some extent, because you'll be able to freely change the orientation. But it's sort of an inherent flaw with the design of that ship that it's like that. There's nothing planned to do about it at the moment. I agree it's less than ideal, but there's nothing scheduled to do anything about it this time.
Okay. And what with the work on the news reporter one, the news reporter Reliant, does that mean anything for the news reporting gameplay?
So I would not expect gameplay for that and the researcher to come online with the ship in 3.5. It's purely just going to be the ships. As much as we'd all love to drop the ships with the gameplay, we can't always do that. Obviously, the Prospector came with it, but we have like the Starfarer and the Reclaimer there waiting for their gameplay. Mm-hmm. So those will come out before their gameplay.
Yep. All right. Now we move. Anything you want to leave anybody with about the Reliant variants before we move on?
Nope, nothing from me.
Okay. And now we're moving on to the Vanguard variants. Now I understand you have some pictures to show us. Okay.
They're not specifically with the Vanguard variants after all this, but it's that they're of the changes to the base Vanguard. But I'm going to try and share screens here.
Oh, okay. I thought they were. I thought they were doing. No. Okay.
No.
Well, then I apologize. We should have done it earlier. JJ, just go ahead and go to the. Thank you.
Let's
get rid of me.
There you go. Okay. I presume everyone can see this now, hopefully.
Yes.
So this is where we're at as of yesterday, with the small tweaks to the base Vanguard pod. So this, if you imagine yourself stood at the top of the rear ramp looking towards the front of the ship, you can see that we've extended the pod out wider. Sort of this was the dimensions of the pod before. We've done that for a few reasons. One, to make use of space. Two, to allow the turret to come down and not completely block access through the rest of the ship whilst that's happening.
Right. One of the original concept ideas was that turret was retractable.
Yep, we're still looking at whether we can do that, but that's an exterior change, so we'll be looking at that once we're happy with the interior. But this is for getting in and out of the turrets, the mechanism. The bathroom is no longer the size of a small ship. The beds are the same as they are, and on the other side will be the normal warden amenities. Oh. As you can see, slightly smaller bathroom now, without its frosted glass door. And next to it we have lockers for storing your clothes and suits and helmets and whatever. So this is a big thing that we're going back through the ships adding, just like people have seen we've added weapon racks to some ships. Chris and Tony and Todd are very keen on having a physicalized inventory, so you have what's on yourself and you have what's stored on your ship or in your hab, and then there's your global inventory that you can send stuff to and retrieve it from different locations. But there's all sorts of others. Yeah, it's a lovely rack. There's two of them as well. So this is, we're probably not going to put two on the Warden because we've got space to move one of these elsewhere. But for the Sentinel and Harbinger, where the other side is completely taken up with torpedoes or the computer stations, we're going to double stack the things here so both crew can store their items on board. This is looking back. Big change, double door on the back. When we started this process, we had a good look at the hoplite and the Warden and realized the two externally had diverged quite a lot more than we thought. They're actually two completely separate exterior meshes. Which means whenever we have a bug to fix on one of them, we have to fix it on both of them. So as part of this, we're going to be unifying the base mesh for all the Vanguards. And one of the good things of the hoplite is the larger rear ramp and the larger rear door. So we thought, let's put that on all of them because it just helps getting in and out. This side's still being fleshed out, but this is where your mini galley food kitchen area is. And this is where currently the engineer station sits in the Vanguard. Moving on to the nose or neck section, cockpit it remains pretty much unchanged at this point. You can see we've put in these component hatches. So these, a sweet little GIF or GIF, depending on where you come from on the internet, shows how they all fold out, so you have access to the items. These are size 2 items, so they're not removable by hand, but what you will be able to interact with them on is opening them up and having subcomponents inside, and these are your sort of booster consumable items that you can customize per item to improve the gameplay of that specific item. So on small ships where they're size 1 items, you can pick them up. Size 0 items, you can pick them up and change them out yourself. 2 and 3, you need to go to a repair station because they are too big to handle by yourself. You might be able to have a little mini tractor beam to get them out, but chances are they're not going to get out the ship. You have to go to a repair station. Size 4 capital items, they're a fixture of the ship, so you have to go somewhere specific to get them repaired. And this is just looking towards the nose of the ship. I don't have a GIF of it here, but these steps actually now retract into here, and this opens up and another component comes out the floor because we actually ran out of space, even with all the space around it, that we were still struggling to fit everything we'd said in it because the Vanguard has essentially double of all the core components, which is not a common thing. We were struggling to fit them in, and that's all I have for the Vanguard variants. It's not particularly variant specific, but this is improvements to the base Vanguard that we're doing first.
Gotcha.
To enable us to not waste time with the variants.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so the Vanguard, Vanguard's one of, let the community choose my favorite ship, and the community chose as the Carrack and whatnot. But realistically, the Vanguard has actually been one of my favorite ships. I got to work with Gurmak when he was doing the original concepting of it here. I got to see it. It was like the first ship I got to see developed from the end, and whatnot. It's always got a soft spot. So when work on the improvements to the Warden are done, then work will begin on the Sentinel and the Harbinger?
Yes.
Okay. Has there been any feature changes to the Sentinel and the Harbinger people might want to be aware of?
Harbinger, very little has changed with it. If anything, it'll be getting more missiles or more torpedoes. I think it only was scheduled to have 3 in that interior bay, but you can we'll try and fit a few more in. They're size 5, so they're big, but they're not Retaliator or Eclipse sized. And depending on how far we go with the exterior, I know the original concept had retractable or hidden missile launchers, which if we were to do that would go across all of them. Then the Harbinger would have more like underslung missile racks, but nothing confirmed there. Sentinel wise, Sentinel 1 had the rocket pods on the turret, I believe. Yeah. That's still planned. What probably would change on the Sentinel is it will have less of the greebly TV antennas and satellite dishes stuck to the outside of it in odd places. We plan on doing something externally for it to give the same effect, but it's probably not going to be. If you look at the concepts, they're a bit awkward looking. So we'll have something on there to reflect its scanning and e-warfare. That's in line with the visuals of the ship. Internally, it has a station and it has extra computing power, and the computers are actually front and center in that pod as a sort of feature piece.
Before we move on from the Vanguard variants, we talked about this a little bit last year in our Shipyard series of articles, which if you haven't seen are available now on robertspaceindustries.com. They came out in like October 2017. 8 or 9 articles, great resource for the future of the ship pipeline, ship development. One of the things that we stated in those shipyard articles was the removal of the battlefield upgrade kits, or the bucks. For those we've gained a whole lot of people, not just in the last year, but in the last week. What can you tell us about what's happening with the battlefield upgrade kits?
They're still removed, but that's not to say they were a waste and people have got things that they can't use. We're still going to be giving you the same contents. The pod still swappable. The external items will still be swappable. The paint job still swappable. So instead of having this, I'm not even sure how. Yeah,
instead of a bespoke item, instead of like some item that you'll just attach and we'll swap everything out, we're just going to give you the collection of items.
Yeah, you'll have the collection of what it was going to be anyway.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you're still getting, people are still getting what they pledged for. It'll just operate slightly different than.
Yeah, rather than just having one drop, I've upgraded this from this to this. Instead of clicking once, you might have to click 3 times.
Gotcha. So it'll be a turret. It'll be a library. It'll be an internal room kind of thing.
Which I believe you still could have done with the bucks anyway, because there was talk about taking the turret off the Harbinger, putting it on the body of the Warden with the Sentinel paint job. So it's still the same in that regard. It's just a different name.
All the same raw functionality.
Yeah.
Just okay.
The stuff that people really should care about is all the same.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Moving on from the Vanguard series, let's talk about the Hull series. Now, we were seeing that the Hull C was virtually art complete a year ago, and then it dropped off the radar. It just stopped. Talk to us about what's going on there.
Time for the Hull C saga. Yep. Everyone pull up a chair.
Yep. And I do want to remind folks that we actually covered this topic with Todd Pappy about 4 months ago on Calling All Devs. So, but we'll get John's side of things.
Yeah. So, I probably should have watched that. And
probably.
Repeat it verbatim.
Now we'll see if the story has changed at all.
Yeah. So, art-wise, it's not 100% done. It's not 100% final art. We're probably 80% of the way there, 90% of the way of the final, what we call Lot Zero art. So that is the absolute high poly in-game asset that you see close up. What it doesn't have are all the LODs, which is what we need to do to make it run at an acceptable frame rate. And we don't have any artwork for any bits that deal with the contraction and expansion of that central section. So whilst we do have something in there, it is not final art because we simply don't know the technical setup at this point. We can't give an artist a task to go set it up this way because that's not actually how we may end up doing it, and that would just be wasted work. So art-wise, it's in final art. It's not finished. It doesn't have its landing gears fully done, so people have only seen it in its expanded out flight state. It's not optimized because we're waiting for all the code dependencies to be done, and unlike other ships where you could just release them without them, that's not an option with the Hull C because it's a cargo ship. It's a cargo ship that has to be expanded to carry its cargo, which means it cannot land, which is our current in-game only way of being able to sell that cargo and load that cargo onto your ship. So we could release it as it is, permanently expanded, but you would never be able to load cargo onto it or sell cargo from it, which is kind of pointless in many areas. And also, there's nowhere to spawn it because you couldn't spawn it on a landing pad because those have gravity, and now this spindly ship is going to fall out the sky and land on it and probably explode. So there's a few really big code tasks that we need to do. One, vehicle state machine, which we talked about earlier, to be able to drive extra states outside of landing gear, because we could set it up as in the old way with landing gear, but then you've only got those two states where you actually need sort of landing gear in, out, and expanded as this third state. So that's in progress. From a performance side, it carries, I think, 4,096 SCU of cargo. We currently only have the one SCU cargo boxes. So all the great work the network guys and code guys have done to streamline entities and object containers would just be obliterated when this one ship and 4,096 other entities turn up on it. So what we need to do is have the supersized cargo or the enhanced cargo functionality, and that will benefit the entire game. So if you order 16 SCU of cargo, it's not going to fill your crate or your cargo bay necessarily with 16 individual boxes. It might just do one box, and that would actually give you more of the raw materials because you're not dealing with all the dividing wars. So we need that for performance reasons. And then from a pure technical setup reason, we'll have the way to trigger it, but we have these things called local grids, which is what essentially gives the localized gravity to the parts of the ship and allows the ship to spin around in space and you to be walking around inside it normally. Those are static at the moment, and obviously the Hull C is not a static ship. So we need a way to have the front section, the back section, and a bit in the middle that either stretches or animates out to join the two. So the animating part, we can't do at the moment. Scheduled with the German engine guys. They know how they want to do it. They just need to get round to doing it. Object container streaming has been a big sort of delay on a lot of those things. So not only is it transforming physics grids, but it's also having moving ones as well, because whichever way you set it up, either the front or the back is going to have to move, and we don't support that in a single ship. Again, known about on the backlog, will be fixed. And then the last piece is sort of tied in, but it's more for the visual side of it. So we have things called vis areas and portals, and they essentially clip lighting to certain areas and prevent, if you're inside a vis area and there's no portals, you can't see out. So you may have seen on some ships when things go wrong, like the Avenger, you open the back door and it's just a blank void.
Black, yeah.
That's the vis area of the portal not working correctly. As soon as you go in and there's nothing physically to stop you, you see everything as normal. Those, again, are static, and we need that central section to be able to morph with it. Otherwise, if we do everything else aside from that, you'll look at the Hull C and it will expand out, and then there'll be this section that is the length of the contracted version that is perfectly lit, and then it'll just be black with a portal to another realm just halfway down the corridor, and everything beyond it will be completely unlit, and it will probably also affect the outside, so you have half of the ship lit correctly and the other half will be just pure black.
So a lot of technical dependencies
Yeah.
for a ship like the Hull. And you didn't even mention docking.
And yep, lastly is docking. So a way of spawning it somewhere that isn't on landing gear. Not only do we not have the ability to do that yet, that's planned because we need it for the Connie and the Merlin. So the first step will be ship to station docking, because that only relies on one thing moving. The stations don't move, or relatively they don't move. And that's a simpler task than doing ship to ship, which will come after. And that will unblock Connie and Merlin, the Caterpillar command module coming off for Caterpillar. And also we need a location to spawn that, because obviously Olisar doesn't have a docking jetty or something for you to spawn on. So the larger truck stops we have in game, and there's even larger ones coming, have that built into them. So it's this, unlike some ships where you can release it without the gameplay, some you can release with some of it. The whole sea is this perfect storm of, we need all these pieces to come in 1 quarter, and then have the art time to finish it off to do it. And for a variety of reasons, no one department's fault, just they have not been able to be scheduled to come in at the same time.
Yeah. All right. But still on its way.
Still on its way.
Not what we would traditionally refer to as soon.
Yeah, it's probably the one ship that Chris asked me about the most. It's like, when am I getting the whole sea?
Yes, he walked out in one of the anniversary promotion videos we were doing. You don't see it on camera. It wasn't in the edit, but he walked out and he asked us about that. And I was just like, sorry. All right, moving on from the whole series, let's talk Polaris. Now, Polaris, there's not a whole lot of RSI ships out there. We've got the Constellation and the Aurora, obviously. The Polaris introduced at CitizenCon, I think it was like 2016, I think. Captured a lot of imaginations, got a lot of hearts and minds. What can you tell us about the development of the Polaris?
So Polaris is not in active development. There is no one physically working on the ship. But that doesn't mean the ship's not coming along, because like a lot of our ships, we build the style guide and we build up. So the work for the Carrack, which we'll talk about, has been helped by doing the Valkyrie, which was helped by doing the Terrapin. So we built up slowly. This is what an Anvil fighter looks like. Here's a small multi-crew. Here's a medium multi-crew. Here's a large multi-crew. And we're sort of doing the reverse. Well, we're doing both sides of it with the Polaris. So we've got the Connies that have set sort of one style of RSI. And then we have the Bengal, which we're fleshing out pretty well for Squadron on the other end. And the Polaris sort of fits in between the two. The actual concept used a lot of the Bengal design, and it used a lot of the Constellation design, and just sort of fused them into one ship. So the developments on each side of it are helping streamline that ship when we get to actually having some artists on it and building it. They're not going to have to spend time sort of noodling around trying to figure out what the style guide for this ship is, because they'll have all these pieces to pull from. But there is no one physically working on it directly, and it's not in the near term scheduled to have anyone to start work on it. But that's all, I'm afraid.
Okay. One of the questions that was in the thread had to do with ship armor. Well, not exclusively related to the Polaris. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in here, since we don't have a whole lot to talk about with the Polaris. We mentioned a while back that ship armor, what was a stat, ships obviously have like hit points and what, we're using kind of like a hit point system now, but we don't actually have, we want a ship armor stat, but it's not completely integrated into the game yet. Has there been any update on that?
So yeah, we do have ship armor in the game, but as you say, because we're a hit point system at the moment, armor is just really a sort of multiplier on that. It doesn't have its own health pool. It doesn't degrade the more you shoot it. It's just a completely flat per damage type. So physical damage will be reduced by this amount, energy will be reduced by this amount, and then it lets the rest through to the hull. So that's not where we want it to be, and neither is the hit point system. So Chris is very keen for us to do the whole physically based damage stuff. It's not a simple, we're going to change from hit points to doing it physically. It's an ongoing thing that's going to take a lot of time and effort to do. But it will make everything more systemic and less away from just, I'm going to add 10 points here to do this, I'm going to do 100 points here. That it's based off the geometry of the ship. Mm-hmm. The armor itself will then be not visually physicalized, but it will be a stat that can degrade and actually have some real impact on it. And then we can perhaps look at a way of reflecting that on the ship, because at the moment it's very binary, and it does something or it doesn't do something, and it's not a great stat to put on the website. Like, it has small armor, it has size 1 armor, it's a size 2 armor. It doesn't fit in that section. Mm-hmm. And then the technical specification section, it's not how am I going to describe this armor in one set of numbers? Does it just reduce by this amount? Sure, I could put that in, but it's not useful information without the rest of the information.
Gotcha. So it's not to say that it's not a stat that won't get added to the ship matrix at some point. It's just that doing it right now wouldn't be very effective.
No, and it's almost like it would give you more useless information than it's worth to put on there.
Okay. All right. Moving on from the players, we're gonna start hustling a little bit. Let's touch on the Idris real quick. The Idris, we've talked about the Idris at length. You saw a lot of the Idris in the Squadron 42 playthrough from last year's holiday live stream and whatnot. So we're not going to spend too much time on the Idris. I want to hit 2 points with the Idris. One, that we know that there's a lot of discussion lately about the differences between the Idris M and the Idris P, and what the procedure from going from one to the other and upgrading them and becoming militaristic. I'm going to go ahead and head that off right now and say that this discussion is actually still happening internally. So we don't have anything approved or signed off to share today. I've seen people ask about it. I've seen Spectrum, I've seen the forums, I've seen Reddit, so I know people are keen to learn about that. We're going to make a post of some kind, whether it'll be a Spectrum post or a com link, we don't know yet, when we have that information and that design better fleshed out and signed off. So we don't have anything to offer about that topic today. I didn't want to avoid it though. So that's our comment on that. What John can talk about here, though, is we don't see the Idris on the roadmap. Now, a long time ago, in an ATB, there was an errant line about how we had something like only the missile room was left, and it was almost final art complete. Final art is not the end of a ship's development.
No.
And let's talk a little bit about that. Why isn't the Idris something that we see on the roadmap right now, even though it was so close to final art complete a year ago?
So, as you say, final art complete is not. It's only probably about 3/4 of the way through the actual pipeline, because we have it confuses some people. We have the final stage, and then we have the release prep stage afterwards, because the final art stage essentially gives you the 100% complete intact model that needs all its optimization, and then needs all the other departments to make that go from something that's in 3ds Max to an actual in-game asset to something that can be used as a ship. And then looks great with lighting, audio, VFX, UI, all that stuff comes
damage
on.
states
Damage states on the rest of the other department's final state is all of that, and then you have the release state, which is doing all the LODs, doing all the damage, doing all the bug testing. So when something's final art, it's not a week away from being released. It, depending on the size of the ship, it could be months or even years from where it is. But for the Idris specifically, that missile room is still not done. So that is still there to be done. And part of it is Chris and Erin have talked to me a lot about, we want to save the Idris for Squadron. We want your first experience with it to be in Squadron, learning the crew and having that great experience. And for me, that's still the case. So part of that's the reason why it's not on the roadmap, because it will come out after Squadron is done, and our roadmap only covers the next few quarters. And I've also forgotten the other reason I was going to say. There's still stuff changing because of Squadron in that. So you will have noticed in the live stream last year, we had these pilot ready rooms. They were a new thing last year that we reworked a chunk of the ship around to add. So there's still little bits going in.
Yeah, it's like the hero asset of Squadron 42. It's your player's home. It's probably the location that you'll see more than most locations, I would imagine, if that's safe to say.
Yeah, and there's large bits of the story where it's about you learning the ship and learning the crew and exploring it as a pilot on board. Whereas if you've been given it in the PU and you know that ship inside out because you've spent hundreds of thousands of hours running around it in the PU, it sort of takes away the charm of Summer Squadron.
So I imagine we're going to be tweaking and adjusting and improving the Idris right up to the point where we have to push it out the door with Squadron, because it's such an important part of that game.
Yeah, and there's also bits that the PU needs that Squadron doesn't need. So once Squadron are happy with it, we can finish off the rest of the art pipeline. And then from there, we need to do all the extra bits that are behind the scenes for PU support.
Now that's just art and some and a lot of technical stuff. But I imagine it's something like the Idris and capital ships in general are going to be reliant on systems like NPC crews.
Yep.
We're gonna need. It's one thing to have the reclaimer, and the reclaimer can be piloted by one person and flown through the persistent universe. Salvage isn't in this, so there's not a whole lot you can do with the reclaimer for all cards on the table, but it can still be flown around and operated and shown off with one person. The Idris is going to need some help. More. Yeah, the Idris is going to need help, and we talk a lot about. We've said a lot in the past about how the Idris can be operated solo, and I want to take this opportunity as a good thing to define that there's two kinds of solo. There's solo in the universe, and there's solo in the game. Solo in the universe, is one physical being in control of the ship and operating the ship and being able to bring the ship from A to B. And then solo in the game is you as a player are by yourself with the assistance of an NPC crew. But that's still multiple people in the game world. So the Idris is the latter, while the Reclaimer is the former. The Reclaimer can be piloted by one person by themselves to get to A to B. But the Idris I imagine, is going to need the use of an NPC crew.
Yeah, it's like me or you if we were naughty people and we stole a cruise liner or an aircraft carrier. Sure, one of us could steer that thing.
Yeah.
But you can't run it by yourself without the assistance of others.
Yeah.
Or you can run it, but it is not optimal.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've been. I wish we could find a different terminology for it, but there's two kinds of solos out there. There's Harrison Ford and there's Alden Ehrenreich.
I knew you were trying to get a Star Wars reference in here.
There's two kinds of solos out there, and they'll both be in Star Citizen and whatnot. But the Idris requires the other kind of solo in order to be used in the game. And if we put it in there before, then what's the point? It'd just be a big lump sitting there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on from the Idris, let's talk about the Vulture. Let's jump ahead. We've been talking about some stuff that are kind of older. Let's jump ahead. We're going to start jumping around here because we are we're already at time, but I'm going to approve a bit of overtime here. We've been hearing about Salvage gameplay and how it's coming for a while. A lot of people have a question about, when Salvage gets added, are we going to have a ship? Is everybody going to have a reclaimer, or does this affect the Vulture's place in the pipeline?
It somewhat affects the Vulture in that we're trying to tie the Vulture in with Salvage. It's one of those ships where it's not too big that you can be quite reactive to where Salvage gameplay comes in, that we can sort of line up the cards, but the Reclaimer's there, and just like we did for the Mining and the Prospector, we'll probably do the base implementation around what the Reclaimer has. If the Vulture's ready at the same time, great, that will go out as well. But it's higher up the list than some other ships, but it's not jumping massively.
Okay. All right. So we might see it sooner than some other ships. As far as I know, one of the big questions that comes online is how we prioritize these ships in the pipeline. Why don't we just make them in the order in which we introduce them? For instance, in fact, let's take a couple of moments to talk about that just as a topic. Why don't we just make all the ships in the order in which they were introduced?
few reasons. One, a lot of those older ships, their concepts are very, I don't want to say crude. Crude's the wrong word. They're not as in-depth as the modern concepts are. So when we do concepts now, we do full interior breakdowns, full item placement breakdowns. A lot of those older ships do not have that stuff. The Carrack being a great example, had a load of great exterior shots, and the only shot of the interior you had was that cutaway, which showed the bridge. Right. So when we did the Carrack, we had to figure out the rest of the ship. So the time needed to do a big old ship is way more than doing a new ship of the same size. It's not because we're just trying to bury some older ships because people don't like them. It's just it's an efficiency of time. The more we do, the quicker we get, and it also gives us time to get concept support from Paul and his guys and girls out there to help us block out the bits we don't know.
Right. When you have one artist coming free, you can sit there and say, we've got one artist. Obviously, having one guy start on something the size of the Merchantman with the scale of work on the Merchantman is not very efficient. But you can take the one guy and put him on the Reliant variants.
Yeah.
For instance, and so those get moved up because he is going to be free because his work is cleared up quicker.
And like I said earlier about the Polaris having the Bengal and the Connies to pull from, and the Carrack having the Valkyrie and the Terrapin to pull from. The same's true for the Merchantman. We're doing the Defender now, so we can solve a lot of the artistic, technical questions on a small scale before doing it large scale. The Endeavour, if we tried to do the Endeavour, I can't remember which came first, the Starfarer or the Endeavour.
The Starfarer.
If we tried to do the Endeavour soon after the Starfarer, we only really had that one big misc ship, and I know a lot of people don't like the layout of it. And I like to think that we've learned a lot about interior layouts since then.
Yeah.
So the Endeavour could have turned out quite differently if we'd just gone, this is next in the line. Let's do it now.
Yeah, the Endeavour, not the Endeavour, the Starfarer and the Retaliator were two of the first ship interiors that we did, and I think one of the big challenges that we encounter as development goes on is folks having to wait for their ships, wait for their ship's time to come into the pipeline to be done. And the best thing that I can offer to people, and people have heard me offer this over and over again, and it's still true, is that we get better as we do this. I don't think anybody will argue that the ships we made in 2015 were better than the ships we made in 2014, in 2016 better than 2015, in 2017 better than 2016, and so on and so on. So the wait is actually in many ways one of the best things that can happen for your particular favorite ship. The more we get done before we do your ship, the more experience we have, the more common elements we have, the more people we have, the more resources in general that we have, and ultimately I think you get a better result for it. For everybody that's been waiting for the Carrack, I don't want to blow it out of proportion or anything, but I think the Carrack that you're going to get, hopefully next year, will be better than the Carrack you would have gotten if we had made it 2 years ago. And I don't think anybody would argue with me in that point. So in some cases, in many cases, the wait is better for people. It doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't make it any more annoying, but maybe that's something to hold on to anyway. All right, we've got to start motoring. Genesis Starliner, why aren't you making it, you coward?
Same reason. We want to, in the current schedule, we're probably going to tackle all the Crusader ships one after another. We'll probably start with the Star Runner because it's the smallest, allows us to solve a lot of issues, and then we'll go, I think at the moment the Star Lifter and the Star Liner are simultaneous on 2 of the UK teams to be done after the Star Runner.
I want my Starliner, man. I want my Starliner.
Not next year, unfortunately.
Is Mixmaster still a thing?
It's not been removed, so I guess.
Okay, we'll figure that out when we get there, I guess.
That's a calling all devs question for Todd Pappy specifically.
All right. All right. So Star Runner, I'm gonna guess we just updated on all Crusader ships, right? I'm sorry. Did you make a noise? Oh, I think Justin is playing Smash Brothers. Okay, so Crusader ships, we're going to try to work on them all around the same time, not in the immediate future. Anything you can tell us about the Nova tank?
Not really.
Okay.
It's on the schedule. It's one of those nice little vehicles that can be done by one person to fill a block of time, so they align back with a group of others who can then take on a big ship.
Gotcha. One of the questions we had was whether the Nova has a sealed environment and life support. Like, could the Nova operate in space? We just saw this article online about how the Navy is strapping artillery to the ends of aircraft carriers to defend against smaller pirates and stuff. And then there was a great image online of a Kraken with far too many tanks strapped to the base of that. Does the Nova have its own life support? Can it operate in space?
I would have to check the specs, but I would expect it to be sealed, so you could use it in space, but it is not designed for that. So as soon as you open the door, it's going to vent the entire interior.
Right.
There is no little mini airlock to get in and out nicely because it's not a space tank.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about the Endeavour. The Endeavour is a big ship. The Endeavour is a big ship, and probably
It's 2 ships.
It's 3 ships. It's a number of ships depending on how you configure it. The pinnacle of us pushing the concept of modularity at this point. Talk to us about the Endeavour and how you see the Endeavour in Star Citizen, and then we'll get to some specific questions.
I don't really have an answer. how I see it in Star Citizen. It's going to be a modular ship. Like, we're not planning on getting rid of modularity as much as the conspiracy theories on the dark sides of the internet think we are. It's still going to have all the modules that you can swap in and out. It's still got the detachable front section to go off and explore somewhere, leave the workshop up in space. So nothing's progressed on it since the original concept pledge time. I know a lot of questions. Probably the biggest question for the Endeavour is the hangar and what fits in the hangar, and I don't have an answer for that at this point. It's something when we get to build it.
Because it was originally going to fit 2 Cutlasses, and then we remade the Cutlass, and the Cutlass got so much bigger.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it still fits 2 of the current size Cutlasses, but we'll know more when we get closer to it. Again, like you said at the start, it's a way out, so no one's particularly thinking about it at this time.
All right, then let's, because the Endeavour is still quite a ways away, and definitely not when we say soon, let's talk a little bit about ship modularity itself then. An enhanced ship modularity was one of the original stretch goals in Star Citizen's crowdfunding campaign. What does that entail? It's never been. There's a definition of it on the website, but as development changes and expands and whatnot, that description hasn't changed. So what does enhanced ship modularity mean? Is it just big giant things that attach to the outside like it is with the Endeavour? Is it the interior rooms like we have with the Retaliator and supposedly the Caterpillar, or is it everything including like the components that we're putting in all these ships now?
So I see it as all one and the same. So you get modularity from the component system, being able to change in and out your power plants, your coolers, shields, whatever, all those things. That can be done on any ship or vehicle. You can tailor that to your heart's content. The ships like the Endeavour with the modules, the Retaliator modules, the proposed Caterpillar, the Vanguard pods, those are really just items, or they will be items when they're made. And just like a component, you can swap them in or out. So it's just a scale thing. They're all physical items, and talking with Tony and Chris, that they're a physical item you own, you have in your inventory, and we wanted at one point to have they're going to take up space in your home base hangar. So if you'd got all the Endeavour modules, you're going to have this huge hangar, because they're physical things. You might not have them on your ship all the time. You're going to open this hangar door, and there is all your Endeavour modules arranged in this big warehouse just there waiting. Maybe you've got all spare items and spare ships in there as well, but they're physical modular items that you can own. They persist, and you attach them to your ships just like any other item, whether it's a small little drinks can sized sub item that goes in a shield generator, to a shield generator, to a retaliator module, to an Endeavour module. It's all these things that can be swapped.
So while we're talking about modularity, we've moved from the Endeavour to that. Caterpillar modules, anything you can offer us? Are they still a thing? Do we know what they are?
We've not spent any amount of design time coming up with anything in particular. We still want to make the Caterpillar modular in that you can customize the cargo modules on it, but there's nothing at this time there's nothing in the roadmap to make, or there's nothing in the schedule to go, we're going to do the pirate broadside one that everyone wants, where it's just 2 guns sticking out each side, and you can do that with a cyclone in there now. I've seen the posts.
But I want a bespoke. I want an actual Caterpillar broadside module, John.
I'll put it on the list with your other ideas.
Please. Okay. We have got to hustle. We got to set out a lot of time.
Let's go.
Let's jump to the 890 jump. Let's jump to the 890 jump. I understand you've got some images for us.
I do.
Let's get right to them.
I'll spend 1 second on each, so everyone's going to have to go watch this back.
We're in OT.
Helps if I press the right button.
Now. We're going to try to do this as long as we can, guys. We still got a lot of ships. We're going to try to get as many in before we absolutely have to go. We do have a hard out.
Right. So these are in a random order. This is on the lower deck of the 890 jump, so this lift goes up to the sort of the bar area. But behind this door here is the 890 jump's little medical bay, which a lot of people have been asking, does it have one? What happens if I have a party-related accident and I break my leg or something? It does have onboard medical facilities, and that's behind that door. We're working on the corridors in the lower section, so these aren't as luxurious as the main guest areas, but guests do traverse through here, so they are quite fancier than the engineering section. So this is wrapped around the back of the ship. It's the current state of the exterior, all 200 meters of it. So you see the back engines have changed quite a lot from the original concepts. These are more like the new Origin style guide for the 600 and what the 300 series is having.
Right.
Luxurious features include a 25-meter swimming pool and steam room and sauna on that side. Mouse was a bit dodgy. This is the atrium area. So we still have the lift that comes up the back between the engines, and this is your sort of main on-surface entrance to the ship. So you come into the atrium, into this area. Obviously in white box, staircases to the decks. The guest rooms are all wrapped around the edge. This is engineering down at the back, so the lift sort of goes behind the wall behind you here. This is where your cargo bay is, where your cargo is stored. Again, even though it's the dirty engineering bay area, it's an 890 jump, so it's pretty shiny. Cargo area will be there, and that all just drops down. More of the engineering. Crew quarters, so they have these shared bathrooms around the place. The crew relaxation area, so they have their own bedroom pods that are all sealed off, unlike the 600 eyes ones, which I know there were a lot of complaints that people didn't like the shared living aspect of it. So on the 890 they're all tucked away, so you've got your private area for your crew, and then you've got a communal desk, eating area desk, and the TV and couch. Chow line to get your food from. That's it for the 890.
Cool.
Now, yeah, that's back in production because we paused the entire team that was working on that to work on the Kraken for CitizenCon.
Yeah. Now, a lot of those images, of course, you see us adjusting the brightness. We crank the brightness up. A lot of those images were really rough, kind of just get in there and take pictures. They're not slick marketing images with all the lighting and stuff like that. You'll continue to see images and better images of the 890 jump on ATV in the coming weeks and months over the course of its development. That was just, we wanted to try to get in there, and literally that was John and his guys in engine just taking snapshots real quick to get us something. So we do appreciate it, John. I got one question on the 890 jump, and we're going to have to go. You made a post on about the 890 jump being able to hold two 85Xs and an X1. Can you give us any other updates on its stats, features?
So that was either poorly said on my part or misinterpreted.
Okay.
As per the original brochure, the 890 jump has capacity to hold two 85Xs.
Yes.
But it only comes with one as standard. So if you own an 890 jump, you also own an 85X that comes with it. And that's what will be in there day one when you spawn that ship. If you have a second 85X that you've got separately or stolen, if that's your thing, you'll be able to store that in the hangar as well. As I showed the cargo bay there is more than enough space to have some X1s or ground vehicles on the cargo grid or in the cargo bay. In place of having some cargo, you could almost lift them up, move them off. There's enough storage there to store them, but it doesn't come with an X1. There isn't a specific X1 hangar. It is just, there is more than enough space for you to put one on there if you so wish.
Gotcha. All right. Now, generally when we do these shows, we're going to go a couple more minutes here. When I don't ask a question, like people say, why didn't they talk about this or why didn't they talk about that? It's almost always, and certainly because I already know that there's no information to give. If a ship isn't in active development, there's no new information to provide since the last time we talked about it. We're going to hit a couple of those ships now and just check in, and so expect some of those answers here. Orion.
Nothing active in development. We started on it. It got bigger. I think we posted about it getting bigger, but it's paused again, and the guys are working on other stuff.
Okay. The big addition, one of the big additions this year is Kraken. Anything Kraken with the Kraken?
Nothing Kraken with the Kraken. We made the exterior for CitizenCon and the commercial, but that's been paused to go back and work on the Carrack and 890.
Okay. Rovers, outstanding rovers are the Lynx, which is supposed to come with the Phoenix, and of course the Origin rover that was provided with the 600i. Anything on the rovers?
They should be in production in the next 12 months. Whether or not they're released in the next 12 months is a different thing. The Lynx is sort of the luxury version of the RSI Ursa, and the 600i. The Origin rover is almost like a luxury version of that. So whilst they're three rovers, they can rove. They're different quality and material differences between them.
It's a good time to remind folks that what's on the public roadmap is what we intend to release in those windows, not what's in development. So that's why you don't see something like the Carrack on the roadmap right now, even though it's in development, because it's not going to release in the, we have the first two quarters. I think we have 3.5 and 3.6 on there now. It's not in those windows. As we know what window it will release in, we'll add it to the roadmap. So X1, anything?
Nothing. Still looks like a gun.
All right. Prowler.
Elwin is super psyched to work on this, and it's going to be him and the LA guys working on it, but I don't have any more info than that.
The Prowler is going to be made here in LA?
Yep.
So I get to see it every single day?
Yep.
Makes me happy. We talked a little bit about the new flight model and how 6 degrees of, the three different kinds of things, the 6 degree of flight model and the main centric model. Obviously the Xi'an ships will utilize the 6 degree more than others. What can you tell us about the Banu ships, like the Prowler and the Defender? Are those still going to be more maneuverable than humans? Because they kind of seem main centric in their design.
Yeah, they're mostly main centric. The Vandal stuff is very similar to human created stuff. The Prowler I expect to handle quite differently, just because the Tavarin are very different in their technology. It's not going to be full like strafe power like the Xi'an stuff, but it will be sort of different, I guess is the best way to describe it. The Banu are scavengers, so they steal and incorporate stuff wherever possible. So the Defender actually has Xi'an engines and Xi'an thrusters, maneuvering thrusters. So whilst it's in a more main-centric layout, they do have different engines, so it will handle a little differently, but it's not suddenly going to be six DOF.
All right. Merchantman.
It will be in production next year.
Doesn't mean it's coming out next year.
Doesn't mean it's coming out next year.
It means it'll be in production next year.
It's currently slated for the people that work on the Carrack to move on to the Merchantman afterwards.
Gotcha. So as things are configured right now, and again, priorities shift all the time as all these, we talk about these dependencies, this ship needs this game system and this game system and stuff. The dependencies changed based on how the work is doing. Right now, the current plan, and we've shared the current plan a number of times, and the current plan has changed. So we're going to do it again. The current plan is that the team working on the Carrack will move to the Merchantman afterward. And what happens to the Banu Defender people?
They are, so it's Josh Coons in Austin is working on the Defender. So he's doing a lot of prep work for the style guide now it's built. Okay. He's going back onto some other ships.
Okay.
So I'm not talking about.
Yeah. So you can expect more Merchantman information sometime after the Carrack is done, is basically what we're doing. That's the current.
As the Carrack is a team of 5, I believe, and it's not going to be all 5 work on it and then all 5 done, hands off, all 5 start on the Merchantman. They will sort of tailor off as it gets towards the end, and they will move on to doing the Merchantman. So there will be a crossover period, and I'm certain we'll show stuff in ATV.
Yeah, I'm just trying to set some expectations. I know the folks, a lot of these folks have been waiting for a while on their ships, and it kills me to see them, constantly, please give us more, please give us more. I'm like, we can only give you what exists. And for the Merchantman, there won't be any new information for some time until it begins production. All right, Constellation Phoenix. Now, we talked about it on RTV before. We've talked about it on Spectrum before. There's a big old post from me if you want to read about the Phoenix and the history of its, and I want to get this right, sensor dampening cargo pocket. Now, without going into the whole history of the thing, because it's available on Spectrum, you can read the Spectrum, what can you tell us, if anything, about the sensor dampening cargo area for the Phoenix?
So that came, well, it's hard to talk about it without going into the history, but briefly, there was a lot of crossed wires from the development side, and we don't want to take away stuff that has been accidentally promised, but it was never supposed to be in there. But because we've said it's in there, what we're going to do is you can have shielded cargo. A lot of ships make use of that, but you can also have hidden cargo, and the two, whilst linked, are not the same thing. So shielded it's a known place, it can be found, but it takes extra effort to discover what's inside it via scanning. Hidden it's an unknown place, and if it's shielded as well, requires extra effort. So the Phoenix cargo bay is shielded. If anyone knows, it's going to be shielded. If anyone knows the Phoenix, they're going to know there's probably cargo in there, but they're going to have to spend time doing it.
It's a big giant cargo bay in the same place as it is every other constellation.
What's different with the Taurus, and where it was actually supposed to be from, is it lost that underside turret, and you have to do a bit of suspension of disbelief and not think, why is that turret missing? I wonder what could be there. But for NPC and AI behaviors, that is the shielded hidden cargo bay. So that thing is the really secret area, and we talked about this for the
cargo
Star
pocket.
Runner. Yeah, cargo pocket.
So
So it has its normal huge cargo bay, which is bigger than all the other ones, and then it has that secondary shielded and hidden area that you can put you can put whatever you want in there, but I presume it's not going to be good stuff.
Yeah, gotcha. So to just sum up, the Phoenix will have its cargo bay shielded. It's not a bespoke component. It's going to be like the materials that the cargo bay is made of will deflect sensors.
It interferes with scanning.
It interferes with scanning and everything. So it'll be harder to tell what's in the cargo bay of a Phoenix than it would be in, like a Freelancer or something like that. While the Taurus will have its hidden compartment where the bottom turret is usually on the Constellation, like intended. So it'll be a little, NPCs won't know to look there.
Yeah. Obviously, we can't do anything about players.
Yeah, players are going to be players.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's that. Let's see, what else? Anything about the Starlifter or Apollo?
No, nothing about them. They're
pretty new. They were introduced this year. They're not in active development. This. All right. Lastly, we started the show with a video tour of the Carrack. We're wrapping back up. We're coming back to the Carrack. I understand you've got some pictures. That video was actually taken a couple weeks ago if I remember, or at least a week ago and whatever. We've had some development since, and so I understand you've got some pictures for us.
Yeah, so that video we did for the anniversary sale. So there's been a few weeks worth of development since. I'll try and share something. So something I talked about in the anniversary sale that confused people is I said the Carrack got bigger, then it got smaller, but it's still bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So the original concept, I believe, was 123 meters. And when we worked on it last about 18 months ago, the internals of it had sort of got to 170 meters, which is quite big for a 6-person ship. And the main consideration and implication of that is it changes the landing pad size, so it's available to be spawned in less locations.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did is we had a look at how the interior layout is, and I'm sure everyone's grabbing screenshots of this right now to do some frame-by-frame analysis. So this is how it was. And then when we started back on it again, we decided, let's try and get it back down to close to where it was, because our extra large landing pad size is a length of 128 meters. Above that, you go onto the same size landing pad as the Reclaimer Idris, and those are not populous or well populated throughout the universe. So the smaller the ship can be, the easier it is to get in places. So we got it down to 125.
Which is what it was in the original concept, wasn't it?
2 meters longer than it was in the original concept, with all the interior figured out, which was no small feat by the art guys. So we've got a side-by-side here, and you can see what we've done in a lot of the interior, that we've taken out some of the connecting corridors and just directly connected rooms together.
Gotcha. So it'll take longer to run from one area to another now.
It'll be shorter because this is the short one. Whereas before, it won't take longer. The engine room has got slightly shortened. The front half of the mid deck is where the majority of the distance went. So this is all now much more tightly integrated together with everything.
So it's still got everything. We just cut out the hallways.
It's still got absolutely everything that was promised. We just shrunk the rooms down a little, shrunk the cargo bay. You can see it's still got those 3 modular detachable pods. It's just got everything, but at a slightly smaller scale and with slightly less air between it.
More efficient.
So that's a quick overview of it. Some exterior shots that I think we used for the preview for this. One thing people have noticed is we changed the landing gear. So if you're familiar with the original concept, the landing gear was sort of external and just dragged behind the ship like Daddy Longlegs' legs flying through space. Mm-hmm. We weren't really a fan of the visuals of that, and more importantly, wherever possible on our ships, we try and cull the landing gear when they're retracted, because they are, outside of the cockpits, one of the most expensive assets, because they've got all that animation and compression on them, so they're very highly detailed. And if we'd kept them as they are, there was a large proportion of the ship's budget just gone onto those landing gears. Mm-hmm. So they're now all integrated into the body of the ship.
That's probably better in case you lose a wing anyway.
Yeah, if you lose a wing now, it doesn't matter as much. You'll still be able to land. So it's a bit lower to the ground. It's a bit more stable. It doesn't have these gangly looking legs all over the place. The turrets are still there. I know some people were complaining that we thought we got rid of the turrets. They're still there. And I'll quickly show off some interior shots. The bridge has slightly changed from the concept. If you're familiar with the concept, there is a big charting table on there now, but we're looking at using a big 3D projected holosphere like you see on the Idris and Bengal that seems to just fit the style better. So this is at the back of the bridge looking forward.
Yeah, so we went from just a flat table to a whole three-dimensional sphere.
Yep, so you'll be able to see, it's the same content, essentially, because the table would have been projecting something out on it anyway. But this is integrated into the ship. Downstairs on the bridge, still got the 3 hanging seats on the roller coaster tracks going towards the front of the ship, so you can look down. I know there were questions about the armored shutters on the exterior of the bridge. We're still trying to do that. There is technical performance issues that we're looking at doing, that because it's going to have to be, because of the shape of the, I don't know why I'm waving my hands because you probably can't see me. The shape of the nose isn't conducive to having sort of armor panels slide over it without them being incredibly segmented or like a roller shutter blind.
Right.
So it's finding a way that we can do that. And obviously, if you do a roller shutter type like the Concept, that is a lot of meshes and a lot of animated meshes to deal with. So we're still trying to do it. We're just not quite sure how we're going to do it at this point.
All right. It's not out or anything. It's just we don't have.
It's not out.
It yet.
It's definitely on the list of stuff we want to put it in it. We're just not quite sure how we're going to do it in engine. Living quarters, the break room. So this is behind the bridge is off to the right side of here, I believe. I'm sure someone will correct me looking at the images, but there's these central corridors that go on the two main decks on coming off the middle of the room. So you've got the crew relaxation area. Upstairs you have the drone launcher room immediately behind the bridge, which contains the drones, and they will get fired out the side of the ship. We've got a full med bay. This is going to be quite a high tier medical bay, so you'll be able to do quite a lot of it because you're going to be out for long periods of time. It's not going to be a bare bones just keep you alive. It's be able to do some form of surgery. Whether it can do the full absolutely reconfigure my character, probably not. That will still be restricted to
something like the Apollo
land-based locations where they have the big hospitals.
Okay.
But this will be able to do as much as you need out in exploring.
Do you know specifically what tier?
I do not know specifically what tier at this point.
Okay.
A very rough block out of the... So this is on the opposite side to where the pool table was. And that's it for the interior at the moment. The video we showed at the start had some of engineering and the hangar bay.
Okay.
And I think there's not much more else to show on it.
Yeah. Now I want to do some clarification here for folks. That a lot of people get hung up on the size of a ship. Like the size, like a bigger ship somehow makes it better, and that's not the case. A bigger ship means more resources are necessary to operate. A bigger ship means more people are necessary to operate it. A bigger ship provides all kinds of challenges to a ship, and when they get bigger, it makes it slower, makes it less maneuverable. There are penalties to ships getting bigger. We managed to keep the ship to the same size it was with the original. The original concept, 2 meters bigger. You still couldn't help yourself getting a little bit bigger, though.
Yeah, we don't just make things bigger for a laugh. It's generally for a reason. But on this occasion, we looked and went, actually, that's too big. We put all these things in and didn't think enough about the consequences of it. So it was a hard battle to convince the artist to try and shrink it back down again, but
for gameplay-wise, it's going to be...
For gameplay-wise, it's significantly better.
Yeah, there's going to be some aspect, and just because I've been with this community for a long, long time, there's going to be some aspect of folks who got it like, no, I wanted 170 or 180 because I don't know why. It's just everybody just equates bigger with automatically better. But the reality of it is, I think there are going to be a lot of people that are very happy that we were able to keep it, where it was supposed to be. So it still maintains the maneuverability, still maintains the performance, still maintains the crew complement, still maintains the what they always expected of the ship. And I think that I think that's a good thing, and I'm proud of you guys. If I'm allowed to have an opinion on it,
I'll allow it. It's not to say I talked about the landing pad sizes. That's a lot of those the ships we have in game. We try and get them into those landing pad sizes because of the complexities of spawning them in hangars. Like you see in Hurston and Lorville, we have specific hangars with a very specific size hole in the ceiling to get out of. When you're in landing mode, we need to fit into those sizes.
Right.
When you're out of landing mode, you can go beyond it. So one of the things that was missing on that image was all the antennas and prongs sticking out the front and some of the shielding on perhaps the back of the engines. We have to do interesting ways of getting the ship down into that volume for the landing state. Once you're out of that landing state, we can then bring those retractable prongs back out. Maybe the shielding on the engine can extend a little, because I know some people were concerned where the back of the ship looked a bit squat because of the scaling we had to do, but that's purely to get it in that landing volume. And We might not do it. We may do it.
Still
but we're aware of it.
It's still got a lot of work to be done. To be done.
Yep, still many more months.
So and over the course of the next couple months, to at least half a year, you're gonna see updates on the Carrack as it continues to go along, and I'm sure it will change some from, well, obviously it will change some from what you've just seen today. In the video at the beginning, we saw a what looked like a Merlin inside the landing bay. That wasn't a Pisces, just to head that off. Work on the Pisces hasn't started yet, right?
No, work on the Pisces starts next year in the current plan, given all the caveats that all stats subject to change. And it's purely in there because we know roughly what we want the Pisces to be, and the Merlin is a very close approximation to it. It's not going to be a big ship like a 300 series or a Cutlass or anything like that. It is the Carrack's snub ship. So it has some constraints on it, and that bay on the top is designed for the Pisces. So a Pisces will fit in there, and nothing else is guaranteed to fit in there. And
then, of course, in the garage down below, an Ursa rover.
Yes.
Okay. Cool, and it's got the two ramps, the ramp on the front and the ramp in the back. If I remember
it's
correctly.
Got the ramp on the front, and there will be another access point at the back.
Okay, gotcha. All right, cool. That's it. We went a little bit past our heart out, guys. If there's a ship that we didn't mention, it's because it's one of those that we don't have an update for, like the Crucible. It's just not in active development and stuff like that. So really, we have hit every single ship that we have information for that is in active development. That is in lots of ships that are not in active development that are just kind of a little forward away. If we didn't talk about any particular ship, it's because there's just no information to provide on it at this time, like that run we did with the X1 and stuff like that. John, we did it, man. I know you've got a meeting to go to. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good to get all that information out there. Hopefully some people are happy.
Our last
people are happy than sad.
Yep. Our last RTV of the year. Guys, because this will be the last time I address you, there'll be a Calling All Devs next week, next Monday. It's already been filmed. There'll be another Calling All Devs after that. It's already been filmed. This is actually the last time I'll be talking to you for a while. I'm taking a vacation in January. My first vacation in the 4 years that I've been here. I'm taking almost the entire month of January off. So we'll be back with more Reverse the Verse and Calling All Devs the last week of January, or maybe even the first week of February. We'll see when we get there. So yeah, so you'll still get ATV like normal. We've got a great team here that can do ATV without me. I'm hardly needed for that anymore. So, yeah, thank you so much, John, for taking time.
No problem.
That's it. It's a good job. I really like working for you guys. I wanted to say like a goodbye. I'm like, it's not goodbye. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I've just never taken a vacation, so I have no idea how to say goodbye for a month right now, and I probably should have rehearsed something. That's it. That's John Crewe. I usually point to the TV, but we're not on the TV. That's John Crewe over there. Vehicle Pipeline Director. I'm Jared Huckaby, Content Manager for Global Video Production. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in 2019, everybody.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.